Ritual affirms the common patterns, the values, the shared joys, risks, sorrows, and changes that bind a community together. Ritual links together our ancestors and descendants, those who went before with those who will come after us. Starhawk. Welcome to In Her Image, a podcast where we seek and celebrate our Mother God through scripture, scholarship, the arts, and everyday life. I am Jess Burdett, and today I am joined by the lovely Jessica Woodbury, who you all know and love, and my co-host Meg Ritmanick. We have been ruminating on talking about this topic for a very long time, and it's finally coming to fruition. Thank you both for being willing to come on and share with our listeners about ritual. If you could give a quick definition of what is ritual and just share a little bit about why it is important to you or has become important to you.
Ritual is part of being spiritual. The word is actually included in spiritual ritual. It's where you put your spirit into a habit or something that you're doing. So every day, maybe you wake up and you have a beauty ritual of taking care of yourself. And those can become more meaningful when you put meaning into them. But sometimes our habits are just there and they're just going through the motions and they don't actually bring more spiritualism into our life. But when we put our spirit into it, when we think about it in a spiritual way, whatever it may be, then it brings that deep connection. And I think the point of ritual is to connect to the divine in some way, to celebrate also different things that you value, making meaning in your life. And in also, I think one of the most beautiful things, you can do ritual on a personal level, but you can also do ritual within a community. And when it's done with intention inside of community, it can bring people together and help them to create value systems that are important to them, and to create beautiful friendships and deep meaning in the way that, just like, let's see if I can say this in the way that I'm thinking it in my mind. But I think sometimes the closest we come to understanding God is by seeing the divine in someone else. And when we celebrate ritual with each other, whether it be maybe in a marriage or a wider community or in your family, you start to appreciate that divine seed within each human being. And so that's why I think ritual is so important, why I like to participate in it. For me personally, with like meditation and ritual that I use for me to personally connect to the divine, for ritual that I do within communities and within my own family. It just brings so much beauty and meaning and deepness to my life.
Thank you. That was an amazing description, and I'm excited to hear more examples of what rituals you actually do. That was such a great introduction. Jessica, what would you add to that?
I love it. I love Meg's response. I feel like it was like the PhD level version. So much
Yeah.
depth and richness in her answer. And I think at just a really basic level, ritual is a way in which we do some kind of action or ceremony or whatever it may be with our body, with our words, with our mind that has an intention to bring greater depth, to bring greater connection to the divine, like she said, perhaps to honor transitions, to help us move past things in our lives. But there's a quote from Joseph Campbell from Myths to Live By, and it says, "The function of ritual, as I understand it, is to give form to the human life, not in the way of a mere surface arrangement, but in depth." And so it really, I feel like ritual can help us to access things in a deeper way. Sometimes it can help shift things within us in a deeper way than just continuing to go on in our lives without without taking intentional time to connect with the divine, to honor transitions. And often these things can be symbolic. I love in our conversations that we've had with some of our guests have shared about their own rituals that they have created in their lives. And it's beautiful because some of the examples can be really intricate and can be really thought out and planned and have taken a long time to create in the way that they want. And others people have shared are things that they just began doing and it became a ritual to them. Like one of our guests talked about eating an apple before she went to church and it being symbolic of her connection to Eve and of choosing to partake of the fruit and her role as a woman. And so something like that can be so small and simple, but it's adding depth and meaning to her life. Or these larger rituals that we can create that may be honoring a girl's entrance into womanhood or a woman about to become a mother. And so there's such a wide range of what that can look like, but really it's about adding depth and helping us to access the deeper parts of ourselves and access a deeper connection to the divine and those around us, like you talked about as well, as we do it in connection with others.
I love that. Donna Haynes said, ceremonial observance adds lucid layers, dimension, drama, and distinction to our lives, making the ordinary seem special and the special extraordinary. I feel like that really goes along with what you're saying about making these moments in our life where we can infuse greater meaning. Like Meg said, it's like bottling up a memory or an emotion or a transition in a moment of time. And we go through transitions and life experiences that are really potent and dense. And sometimes it just helps to be able to put it somewhere, like in your life timeline. Here is this event, and that really happened to me, and it was big, and it's kind of marking the event, I feel like. And it can just really enhance a person's life. So you've mentioned a couple types of rituals already. Are there any more that come to mind? Any types of rituals or different elements, like you kind of talked about eating an apple? What else can go into a ritual?
Well, I'll start with the obvious really quickly, which is that often, in our religions, for example, there are already defined rituals within religion and religious practice. So partaking of a sacrament is absolutely a powerful, regularly reoccurring ritual that many people participate in. Baptism is a huge ritualistic, experience of going under symbolically into the water and coming back up again. And when you think about the temple, obviously the temple is full of ritual. So all these are examples of ritual that some of our listeners maybe have experience with personally with their experience with religion, and other people from other religious groups that may be listening may have similar ones or different rituals as well. But there are rituals that are prescribed by others that most people in a community may participate in together, and then there's the chance to create your own rituals that can really span the wide spectrum of whatever you may feel that you need that extra depth for.
I think that ritual becomes meaningful when we tie it to symbols that are meaningful and powerful, like the idea of eating an apple, like Eve. That's a beautiful symbol, an action that we can make. Oftentimes, rituals within religious traditions become meaningless because we have forgotten the deep meaning of the symbol below it or behind it, or we don't understand the symbols, the symbolic meaning of different things. And so it's easy to participate in, let's say, baptism, for example, and have no idea what's going on. Maybe you got baptized when you were 8 and you're just like, okay, I understand that this is for my sins being washed away, or some simplistic way that was explained to you as a child. But if you recently, I've been studying this because my daughter is about to be baptized. And I felt like when I was baptized, maybe I didn't appreciate it for what it was, and I didn't really understand that ritual and what I was doing, the action that I was making. And after, I remember being mad at my brother and hitting him and being like, I just messed it all up. Like nothing worked. But that just shows that I didn't really have a good foundational understanding of what that action about is. And there's several different symbols that can go along with baptism. For example, it can be the idea of like being buried under the water and being resurrected. Also, baptism for many, many years, even before Christ came, was the idea of being born, entering into the waters of the womb of the mother God and being reborn of her spirit. And this is why Jesus Christ, when he's teaching Nicodemus that about baptism, he talks about birth. And Nicodemus is very confused and he's like, why do I need to be born again? How do I enter into the womb of my mother? And Christ is explaining to him that is born of flesh is flesh, but that is born of spirit is spirit. And so the idea of being baptized is to be baptized by the Spirit, begotten by the Spirit, becoming an actual child of the Spirit, which if you're talking about birth, you can make a conclusion that there is probably a gender correlation between women and the Spirit there, because women are the ones that birth. But these kinds of things have been lost. We've lost a lot of our understanding of these deep rituals. So anyway, that's just a thought that I had about baptism. And I think it's important if you feel like you're participating in ritual in religion, you feel confused about why certain things are happening, then take some time to study symbolism, study ancient traditions, and try to understand what it all is going on here. Why washings? Why anointings? Why this special clothing? Why all these things? When you start studying those things, then you understand those deeper meanings.
Yes. And, all cultures really have their own rituals. And like you're saying, I think sometimes the meaning can get lost over time. But when we think about, you asked for more examples of ritual. And I think about one of my daughter's best friends is half Navajo. And so they are a community that is so rich in very symbolic, meaningful rituals. And her friend got to go through a beautiful coming of age ritual with all these different components of running, off in the distance and having to go faster and faster and staying up through the night and being surrounded by family and these different aspects of the ritual, being dressed up in certain clothing. Or I think about one of my best friends is Jewish, and I was able to take part in her wedding. And it is also so full of deep, meaningful symbolism and ritual and what they're wearing and what they're standing beneath and what they hold together and then stomping on the glass and all of these different aspects of different cultural rituals that have been created over time and over the ages. So those are more examples. But again, just like Meg was talking about earlier, any sort of thing can be a ritual. Getting ready in the morning could be a ritual if you did something to give it greater meaning, to draw your mind to something about what you wanted to intend for that day. And if you do find a way to draw on symbolism within your own mind, something that's meaningful to you, right? That symbolism doesn't have to be something that you have to have studied, It can be something that is symbolic to you in your life because of your own experiences. And so when you see this certain object or when you hold it or when you do something with it, has its own symbolism to you. So you can incorporate symbolism or experience the symbolism that unites you to a larger story, or that's just your own. And all of that is valid in ritual.
I also want to talk about using ritual to process through experiences. There are so many different ways you can do this, but one that comes to mind is the closing of the bone ceremony, which I've had the opportunity to participate in for a few of my friends. In this ritual, the idea is that the mother spirit leaves her body to retrieve the spirit of her child, and that it doesn't come back fully into her body until it's welcomed there and it feels safe there. And so the closing of the bone ceremony is ritualistic in the way that you wrap up the mother in these blankets and you make her warm and you rub her feet and you rub her hands and you sing beautiful songs and you serve warm tea and hopefully you're by a fire and you do all these things that help her feel at home in her body, and but also recognize this incredible journey that she just has gone on, both physically and spiritually. And to have that opportunity, whether we believe it literally or not, is such a rich experience, not just for her, but for everyone participating. And when you have the opportunity to participate in something like that, or let's say a blessing way for a mother, I think that it helps you appreciate the act of birth, of mothering, of bringing life into this world in a whole new level. I will say that facilitating and being a part of mother's blessings for some of my friends actually healed my wound with motherhood, because I got to see other women sitting in circle together, honoring this experience that honestly, like day in, day out, is not that enjoyable. Sometimes it's very difficult and straining and monotonous, right? It can be. But participating in those experiences made it sacred for me. And so it healed a part of my heart that I don't think would have been touchable or healable without those rituals, without honoring that sacred act in a way that was profound and meaningful.
Yeah, I love that. I also feel like it has been very healing for me to participate in similar ritual of things like mothers, of women's blessings, birthing blessings for these women who are about to give birth. And also I love what you talked about with healing and the power of how we can utilize ritual when we need healing, and how that was healing for you, that ritual, and it helped to access things in a deeper way for you that allowed greater healing than you may have been able to without it. And one of the most powerful rituals that I participated in as well was a ritual for someone that I love dearly who had been through a lot of trauma and who she wanted to do something to ritualistically move past that trauma. And so she invited us to all come, those who were closest to her, to come to her home. And it was after a divorce and after, she had been married for over 2 decades and then at some point discovered that there had been years of betrayal that she had been unaware of. And it was obviously very, very difficult coming to terms with all the things that had happened that she had not been aware of in her life and the wounding that she had experienced. And so as she was moving forward with her life, again, she wanted to do something to just access that healing in a deeper way. And it was so incredibly powerful. I'm sure I will share as we ask for some examples of how we can choose to create ritual and take it into our own hands when we are needing it and it's not being provided by our regular community. But truly, it was such a beautiful thing to be a part of and something that did help her to be able to find greater healing and move towards that resurrection and rebirth in her life of her own self and soul.
I especially think when it comes to healing rituals, it's important to have a witness or multiple witnesses to that experience. I mean, obviously, you can do things for yourself and let the divine witness you, but asking someone to facilitate a healing circle and kind of collaborating together about different things that you feel like could be helpful in that ritual, and then having that person witness that experience for you I think it's important to be witnesses to each other's lives.
Definitely. I feel like there's power in that witnessing, and it can help the healing to be more permanent. Sometimes I experience something profound and then it's easy to get sucked back into old patterns or beliefs or ways of doing things. Whereas having that moment of healing witnessed helps me to move forward in this new way that I've embodied momentarily. I really like this quote from Linda Hogan. She says, "The real ceremony begins where the formal one ends. When we take up a new way, our minds and hearts fill with the vision of earth that holds us within it, in compassionate relationship to and with our world." And I do think that there's power in the coming together of people, whether there's somebody facilitating, whether there's one person that's kind of at the center of needing the healing, or it's more of a communal circle, like this is for all of us. There's power in the togetherness, I think, of these kinds of healing rituals that we're talking about. Of course, there's power in the individual rituals as well.
I think there's these group rituals that we can do, and then we can do personal rituals and community rituals. But something I did at one point was every night for 3 months, I took a bath, and it was very ritualistic. I turned off all the lights, I ran the warm water, I had relaxing music going, I lit candles, and like during that time, I honored my body and just I was only allowed to say beautiful, kind things to myself. And that healed so much for me. That was a really beautiful personal healing ritual that I decided to do. And for that one, I didn't have a witness. I was my own witness. And that was powerful for me.
Do you feel like that changed the way that you continue to think about and talk about yourself outside of that ritual? Like, did it shift something longer term for you?
Yeah, I think it did. And also, I think if there's one weakness that I have out of everything is that I'm mean to myself. I don't talk to myself very nicely. And so I find that sometimes I need to revisit that ritual, to help renew that love for myself. So
I love that you listen to yourself and choose to do that when you notice that you might need more of that shift and more of that self-love.
yeah, absolutely. It's easy to fall down the stairs and not pick yourself back up sometimes when it comes to things like that. But yeah, I think ritual can help heal in so many beautiful ways and help us process through really difficult things.
Absolutely. Thank you for everything you've both shared so far. I would love to dive more into specific examples of rituals you've participated in. We've heard some already, but I'd love to hear more about what you started sharing about, Jessica, and any other examples. Meg, you already shared a little bit about a closing of the bone ceremony, but it would be beautiful to kind of share details of what went into a specific ritual that comes to mind, and so that our listeners can kind of get an idea of how they might put together their own ritual with their friends or whoever they feel inspired to invite.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like sometimes, at least in the culture that the three of us come from, there's this cultural belief almost that it's like, unless someone has given me permission to do something, I probably shouldn't do it. And it's like we need permission, for all sorts of things in our lives. And from our our cultural background, there's the scripture of like being anxiously engaged in a good cause and not being commanded in all things. And so I love just thinking about that and realizing that when we realize that there's something lacking, that there's something missing, that we're in need of something to ground us more deeply that doesn't already exist in our culture, our religion, whatever it is, that we have the right to say and to be creative and to create what it is that we need. And I find that to be a very divine act. It's a partnership, for me, as I have created ritual, it is often a partnership with the divine in a way. and in a much more intimate way. It can be so powerful because while the religious rituals that we participate in can connect us to the divine, there's also this deeper connection that happens when you turn to them and say, help me because I feel like I need something more. And what can I create that will help me to heal or to honor this transition or whatever it may be? And so I just wanted to start with that and to say to not be afraid of just embarking. And even if you've never done it before, there's not a right way to do it. And there's not really a wrong way to do it. What's right is what feels right to you, what you know will be meaningful to you. And so you can look up all the books and you can look up all the ideas online if you want to, and maybe that will be really meaningful. Or maybe you just sit down and you just throw off some ideas and brainstorm and start jotting things down that are meaningful to you and what would feed your soul and create something out of that. And I may provide an example of that later as I share about a ritual that I created for my daughter, but maybe I'll just share that one first because that is one that I did create. I had a daughter who was going to be going into young women. She's becoming the age of a young woman. She was turning 12. And I think it is so incredibly powerful and beautiful how many cultures honor that transition for sometimes boys and sometimes girls. And in our religious tradition, there are rituals that honor that transition for boys when you think about them receiving the priesthood and being ordained to the priesthood, and how that is, in a way, an honoring of their coming of age and of their maturing and entering a new phase of life and a new level of connection with the divine and a new level of being able to. Now I'm distracted because Jess is gone. A new level of being able to serve and kind of take upon them the name of God and act and serve others the way that God would. And so I wanted to create something that would be similar for my own daughter, that would help my daughter to have a meaningful experience of acknowledging her maturing, her changing in her body and in her soul as she comes closer to becoming a woman. And so I honestly was kind of excited that there wasn't one already existing, like through the church or whatever it was, because I was like, you know what? That gives me the freedom to do whatever I want and whatever I feel would be powerful. And so I actually kind of will have it in two different parts. And the one I won't talk about because we haven't done the other one yet, but I wanted to do one right around when she turned 12. And I wanted to involve all the women in her family, or if there were any other women that she felt close to and wanted to invite, and to welcome her into this growing up and like entering womanhood. And so with it being something that I was inviting all the women in the family, I wanted to make it inviting and like not too crazy that they'd be like, what the heck is going on? I wanted it to be a ritual, but also just something that everyone would be comfortable participating in. And so for this ritual, I kind of just thought about different things that were important to me. I had heard about different things that other people have done. And so I invited, again, all of these women that are a part of her family. And if there was anyone else that she felt close to, and we all gathered at my home. And we all brought delicious food so that we could feast together. And then we went outside and we're all outside together. And I started off with introductions. But as we introduced ourselves again, I wanted her to feel the power of her womanhood and to know that women are powerful and that we have a female line going back that we can draw on of these powerful women. And so I had us all introduce ourselves, but as we introduced ourselves, I had a red thread, which is very common in lots of different rituals. And as each person introduced themselves, they would wrap their wrist in the red thread, pass it to the next person. And as they were wrapping it, would share their name and then their female matriarchal line, saying, I am Jessica, daughter of Paula, granddaughter of Laura D. in Virginia, great granddaughter of Zina, and just going on and just sharing as far back as they, probably 2, 3 generations maybe of the women who had gone before them. And they could choose to also share more of like it didn't have to be an actual bloodline. If it was a woman that they felt was a matriarchal important person to them, right? And so we passed it around. We were all connected. And as we were all connected, before we moved on, I shared about how we are all connected through blood, love, womanhood, humanity, and shared a poem by Carolyn Pearson about the quilt of women's hands, and how as we are a support group, we are there, our hands create a quilt of support and warmth to hold each other, right? Just talked about how all these women were here as part of a quilt of women's hands to support her, and drawing, the symbolism as well of just like the connection of our ancestry, and that they can be a part of that support as well. And so then we cut the threads and we could tie them and make little, and just have them be bracelets around your wrist. And then I had more of a discussion and talked about shifting away from childhood towards womanhood, and the shifting in her body and how it represents her potential to possibly create life someday, and how powerful that is as a woman, but also that really our body is, and those changes in our body are a symbol of our changing ability to just become creators as women in general. She may or may not create human life, but regardless, as women, we are creators, and that is symbolized in our bodies. And so I went around and had asked all the women to come, thinking about the things that they love to create or choose to create in their lives. And so we went around the circle, and each woman shared, again, something that she loved to create or chooses to create. And I loved the great diversity of what people shared. And just the way that I feel like that expands, showing how different each person is, and based off of your strengths and your passion, how we can all put and give birth to whatever it is that is meaningful to us in our lives, and that's different for every woman. And so it was really beautiful going through that and talking about that. And I talked about how this was also symbolic of her stepping further along the path to becoming like her mother God, and shared, some quotes with that. And then I had asked each woman to write a letter to her with their wishes, their wisdom, their blessings for her as she was entering into womanhood, what they would want her to know as a woman. And so they gave her, those letters. I presented her with those letters, but then I had beads and asked them each to come up and just share not their whole letter, but just something that was meaningful to them from their letter, and choose a bead that could represent that or represent her. They could, whatever it was that was meaningful to them, and give it to her so that she could then create a bracelet with these beads that these women who are important to her in her life gave her, and wear that and remember all of the women who are a part of that quilt of women's hands for her, and all of the power in their wisdom, but also talked to her about how her life is going to be her own, and that she gets to choose what she wants to create, and that she can listen to these women's wisdom, but that ultimately she will know what wisdom she needs for her own life, which may be different than what these women have experienced. And so, we gave her a chance to just ask questions, to be with us, and then we feasted together. And it was not super intense, right? Like it wasn't, but it was really meaningful, and it drew all these loved ones together, and was honoring and celebrating this change for her. And so that was one experience that I feel like was fun to create. And again, like you can create ones that are even more symbolic. I felt like for this particular one, I just loved a few little things that were welcoming to everyone, and just really celebrating her in that way.
I would also love to talk about an experience that I had with a similar type of celebration. We called it a maidenhood celebration, and I helped facilitate this for my really good friend. Her daughter was coming of age, and we did a lot of this similar types things. One thing that I thought was kind of unique and fun, we made a mandala. So I had these like little pieces of wood and I had flowers and different things. And everyone helped contribute to this pattern of the mandala and we put it on the ground. And after between everyone in the circle. And after the mandala was made, we discussed cycles and how our bodies cycle and how we have different rhythm. And we talked about the moon and all these different things. And I felt like it was a really beautiful way for women to share their own individual wisdom about menstruation and their experiences with menstruation and how to honor their body through that cycle. And I think something that was important for that to be successful was that the mother invited people that she knew would speak positively about that experience and could give good advice. Because honestly, I feel like that is maybe a skill that a lot of women have not had a lot of exposure to. We have a lot of body hate as a society when it comes to womanhood. And so having a circle where we're acknowledging the beauty of cycles and honoring when you need to rest and honoring when you have lots of energy and honoring when your body just needs time to recuperate and all these different things. I just thought it was so beautiful to be able to have that conversation and
Love
those
that.
examples for her to follow.
Yeah. Thanks for adding that, Meg. And I think if you're somebody who's listening to this who's like, I don't know of any, like, I don't know that any of my friends or sisters or group would speak positively about their cycle or these different things. You don't have to open up the floor and let everybody speak. You know, you can create a circle still and you be the teacher and not have that talking stick so that everybody can learn and be edified together. I just hope that everybody still feels empowered to create these rituals, even if you might not know who else could add to the kind of feeling that you want to create. And also there are times when you want to invite people who you know will be able to hold the kind of space that you're trying to create. And also I feel like you kind of have to ease into these things and figure it out and maybe your first one you think of it as a practice run and kind of take off the pressure a little bit of like, this is our one monarchy celebration, like it has to be perfect, you know. If you're new to holding a circle like this, whatever it will be beautiful. It will be more than what any of us got, right? Like you have to start somewhere and it's okay if it doesn't go exactly how you wish it would. And you learn things every time you do one that help you next time. You get ideas, you see what worked, you think of new ways to do things. So and Jessica mentioned that earlier, there's no right or wrong really way to jump in, but just hoping people can be creative and think of different ways to involve
I'm
people,
also
not
going to
involve people.
Yeah, I'm also going to throw this out there. If you live in Utah and you want someone to facilitate it, reach out to us via email. I'm happy to facilitate circles for women. I love doing it. It's literally one of the most joyful things that I could ever participate in. And I have lots of special things to bring that would make it incredible. So if you don't feel
Thanks, Meg.
comfortable, yeah, let me know. I'm happy to help.
That's a beautiful offering. Thank you. What other examples are coming to mind? I love we've kind of talked about this coming of age, our young girls. We've talked a little bit about mothers' circles and then the closing of the bones. What else? Jessica, would you like to share more about the healing one, or is there another ritual that's coming to mind?
I would love to share about that. So, as I said, I have this loved one who had become aware of just years of deceit and betrayal, and it was really excruciating, and then did lead, to her separation and divorce, which again is also really, really hard. And that's more trauma when you just think about your young self and choosing this person and seeing the best in this person, and then seeing how this person who you trusted to care for you would wound you in such a deep, deep way and betray you in such a way. And so she, like I said, wanted to do something to symbolically, ritualistically help to just move past some of this, work some of that through her. And so she had a friend who had done some similar things. Her friend is from the Caribbean. And so she had some fun cultural things as well, I think. And so she lives far away from where I am. And some of us flew in and flew like across the country to go and participate in this with her. And there were a few different elements of it, but first of all, she wanted to kind of cleanse and purify her home, her living space from all of that negative energy and the things that had happened there and the person who betrayed her there and all of those things. And so they had created this plan, and they had sage, they had Palo Santo, which is a holy wood that is used for spiritual purification, cleansing negative energy, etc. And so she was holding one of those, a friend was holding the sage, and we went through every single room of the house, and we were all in a line, and somebody had a guitar, somebody had like a wooden flute. I had a finger harp that she had. Someone had a drum, and we went through the whole house making music and then also repeating this phrase, this mantra that she wanted us to repeat with her, that she wanted to just really move again through her body and through herself. And so the phrase came from a Tori Amos song that she was listening to after finding everything out. And she said it was the first moment that she had the thought that she could overcome what had happened to her, was listening to this song. And the song is called Little Earthquakes. And the relationship it talked about in the song was not like her relationship, but there were some phrases in the song where she says, "Give me life, give me pain, give me myself again." And then in the song, she also goes through and is kind of wailing. But my loved one, she said that as she listened to that wailing, it reminded her so much of birthing sounds as well, and of her desire to rebirth herself from this pain. And so we all, went through the home making this music and just repeating over and over again this mantra for her, with her, of give me life, give me pain, give me myself again. And that symbolism to accept life and all the pain in it, and to choose to find ourselves again and rebirth ourselves again through it. And she just really talked about how she felt she was giving birth to herself in a new way. So we went and did that throughout the entire house, every closet, every room. And then we went outside. It was a new moon, which can be symbolic in and of itself. We lit a fire. She has a little fire pit. And so we lit a fire, and we each wrote on pieces of paper. We had 2 slips of paper, and wrote on one of the slips something that we wanted to let go of in our lives. And then we all shared and threw them into the fire. And then we, on the other slip, wrote the things that we want to increase and gain more of in our lives. And we put those close to our hearts. And then at the end, we went and all did an ice bath. We all took turns doing an ice bath, and then got in the hot tub together. And the ice bath was something that she came to rely on a bit during that time, because as she was going through all of that, and she would have times where she would just kind of experience panic, and she was experiencing physical symptoms from everything that had happened, and just from the anxiety and all of that. So going into the ice bath, it would be a way that she could learn to control the panic that you get in an ice bath and you start panicking and breathing, and you have to learn how to calm your nervous system and to take control, and to be able to also have practice of withstanding uncomfortable sensation for a period of time. So we all did that, and we all took turns doing that as well, and then just went in the hot tub and ate and spent time together and had deep conversations. And I asked her recently, as we were preparing for this, what difference it made for her, and if it really made a difference. And she, we were emotional as we were talking about this, and she just shared yes, it did. She said that it was powerful taking action for herself, but then also it was incredibly powerful seeing those that she loved come around her, this group of trusted friends and loved ones, to be there and help her move through this rebirthing of herself, and how meaningful it was to her. And she also sent me something that she wrote where she was thinking about, her children, and her hopes for them and knowing their woundedness as well. And she just said, while I wish I could rescue our children, the best thing I can do for them is to show them by example that I can rescue my own self. Women are amazing. We can take the most brutal violations and turn them into regeneration and new life. Whatever ugly brutality we are given, we can transform it into beauty. That is the divine power of womanhood. And she went on, but I think, again, that is in part the power of ritual. That ritual can help us to access that. And it did for her. And it was an honor to be a part of that. And I think it's beautiful to recognize that people can create that when they need it.
Wow. I love how personal that was, that she created that from a song that meant something to her, and she created every aspect of the ritual. And I love that. And I feel like that gives it power too. This is her thing. She knows what she needs. That's just really powerful. Thank you for sharing the details of that and for sharing your heart. I can tell that it meant a lot to you too to participate. Meg, what are you thinking, feeling?
Oh, just as I listened to it, I was emotional. It was so beautiful to hear about this amazing experience. And I'm just overcome with joy, honestly, for her that she got to have that experience. There's so many women that are suffering from similar types of things right now who don't get to experience that community, that camaraderie, that witnessing, and just that experience of healing. They're just stuck. And that is what is beautiful about ritual, is that it can get you unstuck from those places. Just so beautiful. I'm so grateful that she was willing to let you talk about that experience and share it, because it really is sacred, right? It is
Incredibly sacred.
But I guarantee you there's someone out there that really needed to hear that, and will figure it out, figure out a way to help herself. So beautiful, powerful.
So Meg, what other experiences have you had?
Well,
Or Jess? Jess, we need to hear yours too.
I feel like I've shared a lot of my experiences. One thing that I feel like we haven't covered a lot is ritual in community and ritual that celebrates values. And so I can talk to that, but I feel like it's a little bit of a letdown from such a powerful experience, because for me,
But all are needed.
all are needed. Exactly. For me, like, it's really important for me to teach my kids how to do ritual and to participate in ritual. And so we do something called Celebrating the Wheel of the Year. And we've created our own Wheel of the Year, where we have certain values that we try to celebrate every couple of months. And we do special dinners or special celebrations or festivals to celebrate those kinds of things. And for a child specifically, that gives them kind of a sense of what the rhythm of a year looks like. They know, my birthday is right after Halloween. I know if Halloween's coming, my birthday is coming. Or, if we just did our celebration of ancestors, then we're soon going to do our celebration of gratitude, or Christmas is right around the corner. And so they keep track of their year through these different rituals and celebrations that we do. And I think that it's fun to do these things, and it helps kids kind of live a value. So, for example, in August, September, we always participate in a festival that is a celebration of courage. And during this festival, the kids always put on a play. So even acting out things can be ritual. And the play is about defeating a dragon, and then they all have to like go through a cave and get a pearl out of the cave, and they get to have this lived experience of this value. And it's not like we sit there and talk to them about courage. They're just having fun. In the winter, right before it's about to get really cold, we always do a lantern walk. And this is, when it started to get dark around 5 o'clock. And so it's easy to go out and we just take a walk through the forest and kids sing about how they are a light. There's these beautiful songs and to the world, and they get to live that embodied experience of being a light in the darkness. So I think it's beautiful to learn about the wheel of the year. There's lots of books that are Christian based or pagan based that you can look at for lots of different ideas of how to maybe incorporate some family ritual. And also, you could extend that out to your greater community as well.
That's awesome. Thanks, Meg. That's something that I haven't really dipped into much, but I think my kids would love and just eat that up. So you've given me some good things to research and think about.
Yeah. There's something magical about candles too with kids. They are mesmerized by candles.
Well, we're not going to lie. They're mesmerizing to adults too.
Yeah.
There's something magical about candles in general, no matter your age.
Yeah, we always do like a celebration of our ancestors, and we light candles and we have a candlelit dinner and we have pictures of all our ancestors around. And my kids look forward to that. That's probably one of their favorites. And then always on Christmas Eve, we turn off all the lights in the house and we light a candle and we talk about how we want to be a light like Christ was a light to the world. And it's just so beautiful and it just makes things sacred. I don't know what it is about a little flame in the darkness. It just makes things really special. So if you just want to start with something very simple with kids, turn off the lights and light a candle and have a conversation around a candlelight.
That's so powerful. And I feel like it's something that we collectively are craving. I know a lot of my friends around Christmas time were like, we want this to be a more meaningful time. Like, it's so commercialized, and all of the holidays are, there's so much to just buy, and it's so much razzle dazzle, and it's like overwhelming almost.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people crave like getting back to the basics of, why are we celebrating this? What does it mean? How can it improve my life? How can I honor and celebrate this thing in a way that's more true and meaningful than just happy, whatever, where's my presents,
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for those ideas, and especially for how simple they can be, that I don't have to learn a whole new tradition and memorize the whole book of songs and do things in the right order, but I can just start very simple, creating an intentional moment around the table or around a fire pit. So thank you for all those amazing ideas.
Absolutely.
One thing I'll share is, you mentioned the moon, Jessica, and the new moon that you went outside and saw. And one thing that's been fun for me to participate in is song circles. So every full moon, we would come and gather in somebody's yard and we'd have a fire and maybe some warm drinks and sit in a big circle in our camp chairs. And we would also introduce ourselves. We'd go around taking a turn saying my name and my matriarchal line, like Jessica mentioned with your coming of age ritual. And then we would sing these simple, repetitive, old village songs that were easy to learn, but had rich meaning, symbolism. They were very connecting, and that's all we would do, is just, after a song, we just sit and wait for somebody to start the next song. And again, when you get it going, sometimes you have to start out with handing everybody a piece of paper or a link so they can kind of know what they're doing. But the second time, if at least one person knows the songs, you have no devices, and you just you listen maybe the first time and then join in when you can. But singing together as women can also be a powerful way to release emotions, to feel the community and love of the women around you, and to just be renewed and to move forward with a new vigor and joy. So that's another one that's quite simple that I've participated in, that's also been, it's Like I drive an hour away or an hour and a half away for it, and I always go, that was worth it. That was worth driving that far, even though all it was sitting and singing. It's just surprising how much of a difference doing these things can make in your life. Are there any closing thoughts, ideas that you'd like to share before we end?
I was just going to say dancing goes right along with that. Drumming goes right along with that. Anything where you're moving your body, eating special things at certain times can be extremely great and symbolic and nourishing to your body. At times, we've had a really beautiful ritual of drinking tea every night with my kids right before bed, and it opens up the space to just have a beautiful conversation. And then sometimes we've had a ritual where it's just my husband and I doing tea every night for a few months. And it opens up this time to have a beautiful conversation time together that's set apart and different. So there's just so many different things you can do. This is such a broad subject.
Have you read the Book of Tea?
I have not.
I feel like you would
I haven't
love
even
it.
heard of it.
I'll just kind of throw that out there if it piques anybody's interest. The Book of Tea, and it's very much about these rituals and how it's about so much more than just the tea.
Yeah, do you guys have any books that you have loved that have helped you understand ritual? Maybe we should put them in our show notes, or like,
I don't have necessarily, I actually was over the last 6 months started kind of reading a book about ritual, and that one was okay. But to be honest, still the one that probably was the most powerful for me was not necessarily a book about ritual. It was The Dance of the Dissident Daughter. And in it, she's talking about her her journey towards the feminine divine, but she also includes in it some stories of their own creation of ritual. And those were very powerful to me. And I feel like it was also a really great way of looking in the psyche of the creation of ritual, of seeing someone's personal journey and their craving for ritual in that journey, and then their creation of it, and of ritual that ended up being very powerful for them because they created it for what was meaningful and symbolic to them. And so I feel like that was the first time that it was one of the first times when I really thought deeply about creating ritual for things in my own life, for what I needed, for what I wanted. So that's a good one.
I'm the same. I haven't read a book about ritual specifically, but I think that reading Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes kind of gave me that, like Jessica talked in the beginning about needing permission sometimes. It kind of freed me from feeling like I needed permission or that I could only do things in a prescribed way, and helped me to realize I'm a wild woman and my life just happens as it happens, and I just need what I need when I need it. And it's okay to create those rituals around the times that I actually need it. So that was a good one to kind of open my horizons a little bit and say, it's okay to just be me. And because it can be a little bit, I don't know if humbling is the right word, to reach out and say, I'm going to do this thing. I had a hysterectomy, or I went through menopause, or my last baby flew the nest and now I'm an empty nester and I need something. And it's going to be different than anything maybe you've ever been to before, but I need sisterhood, I need community, I need support, and I'm creating this ritual. Will you come? So books like that, podcasts like that are just nourishing and rich and feminine can help you to kind of take ownership of your own life experience and your own body and just own what you need.
Something I'll say is, like, I've read a lot of ritual books, and reading through them has almost been overwhelming because it's like, oh, I should do all of this, and kind of counterproductive and frustrating because then it's just like, I'm not going to do anything because it's just too overwhelming. I have found the most effective way to create ritual, whether it be personal whether it be for healing, whether it be for celebrating milestones or in community, is just to journal. You will be amazed what your imagination can come up with. And I think we need to have more confidence in ourselves and our ability to be inspired. And that is actually, I think, what will make the ritual more meaningful, is to have led inspiration to that ritual.
Thank you. That kind of ties it back to your very beginning description of it's a spiritual experience. And if we let our own spirit guide the way, just like Jessica's friend did, then it will all come. We'll know exactly what we need and how we need it. And yeah, it might not go exactly like we imagined, but we have the own blueprints already within us.
And we are creators.
Yes. Co-creators with God. We are of God. We are God spirits. So we have that same inspiration, that same capacity. Well, thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you. I loved hearing both of your stories and experiences. And I know we kind of talked about how sacred and holy they are. So truly, I just love hearing, and I'm so grateful for all the things that people are willing to share, because it is holy and it's sacred and it's energizing and it's inspiring. So thank you.
May there be many, many, many rituals happening. Thank you both for sharing.
It was so enriching, beautiful. I'm so excited. I hope that we hear from our listeners about any rituals that they do, that they maybe want to share. Get on our Instagram and post about rituals you do or rituals you've heard of that you think would be cool to participate in.
I love that. We'll have to make a post that people can comment on or share stories about.
Maybe we'll have to do another episode and have people record theirs, and we can put them all together and you can get even more ideas.
That would be so cool. We need to figure that, really, truly.
On Spotify, if you go to, because we upload all of our podcasts through Spotify first, and then it sends it to all the other platforms. If you go to In Her Image Podcast on Spotify, there's a place to send your own audio. You can do it even from your phone. It's kind of like leaving a voicemail. You just click the button, say what you want to say. So if anybody hears this episode and you already have something you want to share, go to Spotify, In Her Image Podcast, and send us your experience. And maybe we'll compile them if we get a few.
That'd be so cool. I would love to hear from all of our listeners about that.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Now go forth and create.
Yes. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy this podcast, we invite you to come on over to patreon.com/InHerImagePodcast for more content and community. We're so excited to meet you.